My name's Andy. My friends call me Eraserhead. Actually, I don't have any friends. I guess you could say I'm totally fucked up.
American-born director Gregg Araki stands as one of the most rife examples of subversive and provocative auteurs we have in postmodern film. His impact in film was first recognised through his involvement in the new queer cinema movement of the 90s, alongside filmmakers like Todd Haynes, Cheryl Dunye and Wong Kar-wai, all constructing films that presented sexuality as unashamed and unconventional. But Araki especially contributed to film with an intoxicating uniqueness, crafting cinematic worlds of indecent nihilism, apocalypse, surreal adolescence, artistic landscapes of purgatorial wasteland. Examining his teen apocalypse trilogy spanning from 1993 to 97, which include films like Totally Fucked Up, The Doom Generation, and Nowhere, alongside his 2004 film Mysterious Skin, these surreal, uncanny, dreamlike and sometimes supernatural frameworks are permeated with bold, experimental motifs, which coalesce to create profoundly feverish portraits of trauma, youth, existentialism, bold sexuality and alienation. The new queer cinema movement drew on post-structuralist theories and emphasized human sexuality as socially constructed. Therefore, depictions could be fluid, changeable, unapologetic, reconstructing traditional heterosexual notions and depictions. And Gregg Araki was a pioneer in this endeavour. Described as a guerrilla filmmaker for a queer generation, his teen apocalypse trilogy, especially the 1993 film Totally Fucked Up, portrayed unrepenting queerness through unconventional visual and narrative choices, using his artistry as a vessel for queer voices and breaking cinematic boundaries of how queerness could be depicted. Totally Fucked Up depicts the lives of 6 queer teenagers who find kinship with one another amongst the alienation of Los Angeles. Araki filmed half of it on film stock and the rest on a camcorder, creating a raw and unpolished illustration of the turmoil faced by queer youth in the 90s. The narrative is divided in a linear, episodic format, segmented by title cards that fragment the narrative. It is undeniably experimental. It is spliced with direct tangents from the characters directed to the audience, filmed through camcorders to mimic unfiltered face-to-face conversation, where the authenticity and loneliness of the characters can become especially tangible, or breaking the fourth wall, if you will.
A mutual terror of loneliness.
There are frenetic onslaughts of words, music, and news articles, one in which details the double suicide of 2 gay teenage boys. The film holds a hyper-awareness of the attitudes towards queer youth, making it a known struggle not just within this group, but the climate of the time. It confrontationally throws the issue in our face. I find Araki's decision to display the news article of the tragedy on our screen an indicator of his bold visual motifs. He does not sugarcoat or petrify these issues, he shows them as they are, as brutal as they may be. Araki described his film as a cross between avant-garde experimental cinema and a queer John Hughes flick. He codes thematic values like sexual and queer liberation through disjointed narratives and chaotic visuals, creating an experimental picture that still remains intimate. A large subject in Totally Fucked Up is AIDS, with the character describing it as a government-sponsored genocide inflicted by bigots, politicians and homophobes, with one of the characters catching it. Araki meticulously portrays real-life events and issues through his experimental techniques, thus allowing the picture to feel sincere and topical despite being so experimental. His narratives are perceivably value-driven, his values and themes presenting themselves through these innovative and exploratory motives. His portrayal of queerness is not just experimental but bold and upfront. Same-sex characters are allowed to exist like heterosexual couples, putting their sexuality on display without having to censor or rationalise or explain themselves. Araki is a true cinematic auteur here. He manages to balance heavy and sincere themes and values through artistic modes and motifs.
I'm so fucking sick of this stinky little butt crack of a town!
Totally Fucked Up is a part of a trilogy referenced earlier, the Teen Apocalypse trilogy, followed by 1995's The Doom Generation and 1997's Nowhere. And why are these films coined under the name Teen Apocalypse? Araki carries the disjointed and experimental visuals and narrative seen and totally fucked up throughout this trilogy to display further themes of disillusion, nihilism, existential doom, and alienation faced by the youth in Los Angeles, universal feelings present during adolescence. Nowhere plays out through a series of disconnected and offbeat episodes which lack conventional structure. Most have no resolution or wrapped-up ending and seem to exist in the narrative with little to no meaning and intentionally lack purpose. Here Araki can use this disjointed and aimless narrative to evoke and reflect a sense of nihilism amongst the characters in the film and perceivably the film itself. The characters are stuck in a cycle of cynicism, questioning and rejecting what is around them. They are doomed adolescents who struggle to find meaning in the vapid world around them. And Araki succeeds in using bizarre visual motifs to portray Los Angeles as vapid, an almost surreal, dystopian landscape. There is not much substance to the place apart from symbols of consumerism which the characters indulge in an attempt to fill out their emptiness. And visually we are denied a full look at the city. It is always dark and empty, as if it is swallowing and suffocating the characters. It looks apocalyptic. Using visual and narrative motifs like the insulated portrayal of Los Angeles, a shallow and aimless narrative, a lack of structure and purpose, Araki illustrates themes of existentialism and pessimism that is rife amongst youth. There's a surreal and dreamlike quality to Araki's films. The vernacular is unrealistic and outlandish.
Lucifer, you are so dumb you should donate your brain to a monkey science fair.
I read it in mouth-to-mouth, squirtle fungus.
Fever dream sequences including life-sized cockroach aliens are randomly presented with no explanation. Characters wear bold and eccentric clothing, the visuals are iridescent and uncanny. Araki utilises these to emphasise a sense of alienation in his films. Amongst the characters, in a hallucinatory landscape on the cusp of doom, it's evident he's trying to evoke surrealism. One of his most notable motifs used to evoke surrealism is his use of shoegaze in his soundtracks. Shoegaze is a dreamlike guitar-driven music genre, most famous examples being My Bloody Valentine and the Jesus and Mary Chain, both bands featured heavily in Araki's films. The music is moody, ethereal, creating an immersive landscape swarmed with dreamy textures. Araki noted he incorporates shoegaze as the music allows us to enter an otherworldly place. The distorted and blurry sounds heighten the surreal atmospheres in Araki's films, paired with his visual motifs.
A big part of my movies is this level of kind of surrealism and stylization and the idea that the characters are kind of walking through almost like a hallucination. And Los Angeles is very, very much like that.
Araki's unique filmmaking vision, as shown through these distinct motifs and themes, are prolific enough to have solidified themselves into our artistic zeitgeist. Like in 2013, he was recognised by the Museum of Arts and Design in New York City with the retrospective God Help Me by Gregg Araki, and Marc Jacobs dropped a fashion line inspired by his work. By utilising unusual and one-of-a-kind visual, stylistic and narrative techniques and motives, he is able to articulate profound themes that present themselves tangible across our screen. And the surreal, uncanny atmosphere his films permeate are palpable enough to be a theme itself, with other imitable facets woven in between, uniquely and artistically. So through Araki's bold ability to present philosophical, surreal and topical themes through experimental narratives, innovative practical motifs and mise-en-scène, he has established himself as one of the most unique filmmakers of our time.